So he was using an application on his phone, and there have been a couple of things. The Google phone doesn't allow officers to ping the direct location and get real-time location information about the phone. There was also beliefs that he was using SIM cards that were possibly European SIM cards that are carried through a provider in the United States but does not provide real-time information about tower connections.
You are watching U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, Lisa Foley, provide a press conference detailing more on the capture, really, of Claudio Neves Valente. He was found dead inside a storage unit this evening. They believe he was the person who carried out the shooting at Brown University, killing 2 students, as well as the person who killed an MIT professor this week in Brookline, Massachusetts. They think he acted alone. We've been hearing from officials in both Providence, Rhode Island, and now Massachusetts who say these crimes are linked.
Yes, again, authorities say they are sure that Claudio Neves Valente is the mass shooter at Brown University. He killed himself inside that storage facility. They found guns there. They think he acted alone. We don't know the motive yet. It was the car that linked him to Brown and Brookline and eventually Salem, New Hampshire, after he was identified by someone who knew him, shown in pictures that we showed you on the air as a person in proximity to the suspect.
NBC 10's Dan Janig and Brian Crandall were at that press conference at Providence Police Headquarters. They join us now with what they've learned. Dan, Brian.
Well, there, guys, obviously this is a big news conference, and you understand why now it was delayed several times. So this is over. As the FBI agent Ted Duck said, that we got him, right? And I told you they were going to say something like that. This manhunt really picked up speed in the last 24 hours, and then even in the last few 8 hours, and it all came down to good old-fashioned police work. They recognized a car, and then there was the interaction with the individual who was also a former Brown student, with the suspect who was also a Brown student for a time before he left. We don't know who that individual is 100% yet. We're going to go through this affidavit, but
yeah, there is a lot to unpack here, and I will say that authorities did basically, I think, provide just about everything. So let's go back. You know, after the shooting, they took one person into custody that didn't turn out to be the right person. They put out the images of this other person, but it all ended up going back to an interaction, as you said, that happened before the shooting in the Barris and Holly engineering building.
Right.
Yesterday, the image that police put out of the person they wanted to talk to who had an encounter with the suspected gunman. That person they ended up talking to not long after that image went out yesterday, and that person, they said, provided a lot of the information. Let's hear from Attorney General Peter Neronha on what he says was the key here.
Within an hour, no more than 2, I think it was under an hour, that person came forward to 2 Providence police officers over on the east side and said he had information, that he was that person, and he had information that could help this case. And I remember last night watching his interview, and he blew this case right open. He blew it open. And that's how these cases sometimes go. You can feel like you're not making a lot of progress. You can feel like you're chasing leads and they don't work out. But the team keeps going, and that person led us to the car, which led us to the name, which led us to the photographs of that individual renting the car, which matched the clothing of our shooter here in Providence, that matched the satchel that we see here in Providence. He was found dead with a satchel, with 2 firearms, and evidence in the car that that matches exactly what we see at the scene here in Providence.
And again, by tracking the car that person identified, and again, interestingly enough, that person they talked to yesterday turned out he posted something on Reddit with that information on Tuesday, but they said they couldn't put all that information together. Well, anyway, they find the rental car that the suspect had rented apparently out of Boston, and they used flock cameras. to be able to track it. We hear about that a lot. And then they used financial records to find that he had a storage unit in Salem, New Hampshire. And that's where he turned out to be. And again, this is Claudio Neves Valente, a 48-year-old who was from Portugal originally, but was enrolled as a physics PhD student at Brown now some 25 years ago. And they said they really don't had any track of him afterwards, but they said during his studies, he would have been very familiar with the engineering building. He would have been there. And then there's also the link to the victim at MIT.
Right, and we have asked the question. So it appears that they were actually roommates back in Portugal.
The MIT professor.
The MIT professor, yes. Nobody in Brown. And he went back there and opened fire. We just heard from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, who kind of laid out the case. What was really interesting about this news conference, and I know our producers back there are going to turn around my exchange with the president of Brown University, but they were right. They got video of this suspect from the neighbors, right? And then there was a great question you had. Then they got really good pictures from the rental car agency, but they never ever got pictures from the actual building where it happened, where he was actually in the bathroom and then left and then came back.
Yes, we now found out that he was in the building a couple of hours before the shooting, and that's where he had this apparently altercation with the person who ended up turning him in, or at least providing the information, and that person may get some of the reward, they're saying, too.
They probably should get all of the reward, but that's up to them. But that individual confronted the suspect in the bathroom, as they said here today, and said, "What are you doing in this school? How are you in here?" Right? Well, it was easy. There was no pass cards that day, and there was no cameras, and he knew that because he had been there years ago. So then there was some kind of altercation. Now let's fast forward to the video, Brian, the day of. So now they're suddenly coming on the corner of the bushes
in the same area.
In the same area. And police kind of hinted that the individual was maybe looking for him or something like that. And then that's when the suspect saw him and said, "Oh, and flew down the street." You should also point that the car that they picked up, police said what also made it very difficult is that they changed license plates. He changed a license plate it went back and forth from Maine, a license plate, to a Florida license plate. So they had the car and then they'd run a plate, and so...
And they say this person, Mr. Valente, was knew what he was doing. Very savvy. But what they don't know, and they were clear, they don't know a motive. There's still a lot of what ifs, at least on this part. There seems to be a little bit more with the MIT killing. But at least with this part, there's been a lot of questions. Was anybody in the classroom specifically targeted? They still don't know that, but they say there were 44 shots fired. That's what the evidence shows.
I mean, we get caught up in Brown and we get caught up in the suspect, and we're all breathing a sigh of relief. Not only as a community we are, but when I heard that number of shots, you have kids, I have kids, you have kids. I can't imagine the fear of when that suspect opened fire in a classroom and these kids were just scurrying. You said that you just we're trying to go through the affidavit, and I think what Brian has to say is very, very powerful because it speaks to the human nature of this. We're trying to go through the affidavit. It's tough in our phones, but what you just read I thought was so powerful.
Yeah, at some point, and it's unclear exactly when, the police showed some of the victims who were in the hospital photos of the person they believed was the suspect, and at least one of the shooting victims got emotional and physically pushed back, and another knew immediately too. So they said, again, Peter Nerona, the Attorney General, said at the end, we're 100% confident we have the right person here. And again, they found 2 guns and the satchel that you see in the video. And again, there was the same jacket that we saw in the video from Nair Brown after the shooting that the suspect was wearing, that they have him on video at the rental car place as well.
Right. But I want to just talk to my producer, Courtney Cole-Luca. Courtney, we have the colonel right here now, but so we'll get him mic'd up. Let's toss to Leanna Folk. Leanna, you are in Salem, New Hampshire. Is it still an active scene right now?
Yeah, Dan, Brian, from what we're seeing here, a tow truck has just arrived to this storage facility in Salem, New Hampshire. Investigators are basically saying this was the final stop in that trail that stretched from Providence, went through Massachusetts, and ultimately ended here in Salem. Now, according to newly released affidavit from the Attorney General's office, it was financial records, video surveillance, and even tips from the community that ultimately led here to a storage facility unit where Claudio Valente's body was was found. Now, investigators say this really all began with a post on Reddit. That post referencing a blue-gray Nissan with Florida license plates seen on Cook Street near Brown University the day of the shooting. Providence police then received a tip from the same Reddit user who told investigators they confronted Valenti over what they described as suspicious behavior around campus that day. Surveillance video later confirming the suspect was driving a gray Nissan Sentra with Florida plates. Police tracked that car to a Boston area rental facility where records confirmed Valenti rented the vehicle. Now, flock cameras tracked that vehicle to a storage facility in Salem where Valenti's body was found inside a unit he owned with multiple firearms. Now, what these documents do not answer is the why. It's the question on everyone's minds right now. Why did this happen? Why Brown? Why now? And that's a question that investigators say they'll be trying to answer for themselves as they continue on with this investigation. Dan.
All right, Leanna Falk doing a great job on the ground there in Salem, New Hampshire. We are back live now with the Colonel Perez, who has been credited not only by the mayor, the Colonel of Police, the FBI, as handling this case. And Colonel, I know you get a little emotional because, you know, here's the kid that came from Columbia with no shoes, and now you're front and center in a national story that you helped solve. Tell us what you felt was the biggest break.
I think the biggest break obviously had to do with that individual that we were able to identify and ask them to come forward and give us his side of the story of what occurred, because we weren't sure if that person was with the actually person of interest that we were looking for, but then when he came over and actually himself saw a Providence police officer, says, hey, listen, I think you're looking for me. He came down and he was able to corroborate exactly and tell us exactly all the questions we had. When you look at a video, videos don't speak for themselves.
Right.
And so you're just looking at a piece of evidence and you're just not sure what's going on.
Right.
And so this individual was able to tell us, and not only tell us, but provide us with a description of a vehicle. And that was a key break, because then we put that through Flock, and then we were able to have several vehicles with that color. So,
Colonel, I want to go back, if we can, just so we can explain it. This individual you're talking about is in the building, and he sees the suspect come in the bathroom, the Attorney General says, and they have some kind of a fight.
Correct.
Or some kind of a disagreement. Can you just walk us through how that all happened?
yeah, it appears that this individual actually spends a lot of time at Brown, and so he saw this individual come in, and he wasn't sure. Someone that didn't look familiar to him, and so I'm not sure if it was an argument, whether it was a discussion between the two of them. Our subject of interest ended up leaving, and then this person, obviously very attentive to what's going on, observed him on the street again, and then decided that he was going to approach him just to ask him. And that's when you see in the video that our suspect of interest runs, and then this person's chasing him. And at that point, obviously, it was a concern for us because we weren't sure what occurred.
Right.
And so he explained to us that obviously he saw him inside Brown.
And saw him again.
And then saw him again.
And
then
they
wanted
wanted to just talk to him, and the suspect took off. Now, you said that he chased him. Did he end up catching up to him?
Oh, yeah, not only catched up to him, but got in front of him and says, what are you doing? You know, what is it that you're trying to do with Brown? And the person says to him, why are you harassing me? And so that called our person that came and spoke to us sort of his attention and says, you know, I'm not harassing you. And then he walked away. That was it. That was the extent of that interaction.
Wow.
Colonel, we know now that there was a Reddit post earlier this week by that same person. What happened there? It seemed like, was that looked at right away? I know you said here that you didn't know until just yesterday that it was the same person who made the post, but was that post looked at? Because it did talk about that same car with the plates.
Correct, yeah. We got a tip that came in through the tip center about this post, and so immediately we pulled it. And then it was interesting because we said to ourselves, whoever wrote that post had to be there because that's what we're seeing on the video. And so what we actually did was we started to figure out who wrote it, reached out to Reddit. There's actually legal requirements for you to get that information from that post, which we were able to get. It was denied at first, but then we were able to get an angle and got some info as far as who actually posted it. We found an individual that actually said, no, we thought it was him, but he actually had reposted what was posted originally. So then we had to go back to the original post, and we were in the process of trying to find out who wrote the original post until we found this tipster who came in and admitted that he actually wrote the original post.
Tell me what it was like just generally today, as we're all waiting to hear what happens, but we know that you've now identified somebody,
Yes.
and you know this is happening, and you're tracking him to New Hampshire. What is that like as you're trying to figure out where exactly he is?
I'm sorry, read that again?
What is it like when you're waiting to find out where this suspect is? You now know who he is, you think you have an idea where he is, but what's it like trying to figure that out and wait for the word from me?
It's difficult. I tell you that you're just standing by. It's no different than me. I got 32 years of service. I worked in narcotics, conducted search warrants, and you wait for that last minute, and you're desperate to get the job done. And then so it's a lot of pressure because you don't know, it's a lot of pressure. It's just.
Right. Colonel, the individual that kind of broke open the case, we haven't read through the affidavit ourselves because of our phones and things just breaking, but there was a report that he was homeless, a former Brown student who was homeless who actually lived in that building.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell you because I'm not really sure, but I know that in my eyes, he's just a great person who provided great info and broke the case, and I'll tell you that I'm happy. And to the sense that I'm glad that he took action,
right.
Because if it wasn't because of him, we could still be working. I'm just not sure. So,
do you think we will ever know the motive?
I think so. I think that I truly believe in the federal agencies, and their assistance was incredible, finding small details, and so I think that. I'm sure they will continue. Obviously, we have this homicide that occurred at MIT, and so they're going to continue to do the due diligence. I know our detectives obviously are interested to find out more, and so we'll continue to do. This is obviously this is great for our community. I'm very happy to bring justice to the victims, families, and to bring peace to our city. But I know for a fact that that we'll continue to just because we're interested to see who this individual was and why did he pick Brown.
There was a lot of scrutiny of this investigation from the start. Obviously, it's a big national story. There was a lot of scrutiny, a lot of criticism, a lot of people online who have a lot of things to say. What is your response now that this is over?
I'll tell you, the first thing I'll tell you is my accent gets stronger every time I get tired. I haven't gotten an hour of sleep.
Your accent, you
My
said.
accent, I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay,
So,
no,
I'm tired now. But I noticed that my wife tells me that was something that they couldn't understand, or something to that extent. And so, what do I tell them is that this is a very difficult profession.
Right.
And as a police officer, you have to have patience. You have to have patience, and you have to stay focused on the mission. There's a lot of noise that's around you, but at the end of the day, you got a job to do, you got a responsibility to do, and that's to find the person that was responsible for this tragedy. So I stayed focused, I stayed the track, and when we were upstairs, we will make sure that the officers stayed with the passion to find out who was responsible. This is our city.
Toward the end of the press conference, somebody else was talking. I thought I caught your eye. You looked like you were a little emotional. Were you? What was going on?
No, I think that, I saw how hard these guys work, and that's all it was.
Yeah, he's emotional. He cries on a dime.
I do.
No, but I think it's important to say, because it almost kind of reminds me of the story you told about your father, where people were doing things when you were a kid, right? They made a thing about sneakers, and you reacted, and you got into a fight, and he said, "Don't you ever do that?" And it kind of reminded me of the criticism you received, right? Because you want to fight back when someone says something negative, and it's hard to.
No, I just think there's not much about fighting back. I think there's just, especially with the parents. I think about the parents. I think about the victims.
Yeah.
I think about the students. This is our city, man, and so we want to make sure that they feel safe, and it's just unfortunate. The whole incident is unfortunate. I feel terrible for the parents, but I am pleased that we were able to bring justice to them.
All right. Colonel,
thank you for
we
your
appreciate your time, and
course.
thank you for keeping our city safe and wrapping this up. We certainly appreciate it. So there you heard it. Colonel Perez, he was credited by not only the FBI and by the Colonel Weaver and the Attorney General. This is a guy who was, you may have known from my story about him, came from Columbia, no shoes on his feet, grew up in Providence, got promoted to chief, and then was faced with a huge national story and a devastating tragedy. And I think that's probably why he may be a little emotional. You know what? I think we're all a little emotional. The community, obviously, around Brown, we are a community, and someone came into town and they messed with us and they took some of our lives. And as a community, whether we were journalists or people who live or shop owners, I think you realize the sense of community in times like this.
Yeah, and a lot of people on edge for the last week, not knowing if the gunman was still around. It now turns out maybe he wasn't, but he went somewhere else and killed somebody.
Right.
So that's not to be lost here.
Right.
And as I said, it's quite the turn of events with what happened here. Again, as the colonel said, he thinks we will find out at some point what the motive was, and hopefully that puts a lot of questions to rest. But clearly, this is the person they say is the gunman, Claudio Neves Valente, had studied at Brown in that building more than 2 decades ago. So it was familiar. You just don't know what led him back there now, and they're still trying to figure out what his movements were in the time beforehand.
And the big question is, who is this mystery man that solved the crime? Really, when you think about it, right? Amazing, incredible events. What an afternoon. Patrice,
what an afternoon. Yeah, a big sigh of relief tonight, and you have to be Have a thick skin. You have to have a thick skin to be a police officer, and we see what happened when they finally were able to get that work done. Good police work all around. All right, we want to get out to NBC 10's John Perrick.
Yeah, so obviously two angles to this story here. There's the Providence side, the Brown investigation. We find out it's linked to the MIT investigation, and they held a separate press conference this evening. John Perrick joins us live from that press conference in Boston. John?
Emily and Patrice, for the past week, of course, we learned about that separate shooting that happened in Brookline, Massachusetts, and investigators had been looking into what led up to the shooting, who's behind that shooting. Residents in Brookline had been asking, where are my answers? Well, tonight they received their answer. This guy right here, the same person who shot and killed 2 Brown University students on Saturday, is responsible, the FBI says, for the shooting in Brookline, Massachusetts that left a MIT professor dead. Now, here's the affidavit. We just came out of a news conference here with the U.S. Attorney of Massachusetts, ATF, and the FBI. And in short, what we learned is that the FBI believes, they have reason to believe, that the suspect in the Brown shooting, after he walked into that engineering building on Saturday, he then left and went to Brookline, Massachusetts. Authorities believe that's where he then shot and killed an MIT professor at that professor's home. Now, the affidavit's about 5 pages long, and I had the opportunity to ask the U.S. Attorney a few questions about it. First off, my question was if she would characterize this as targeted. She wouldn't answer that question directly. She said that they need to let the investigation continue to play out before she would use that word. I also asked her to kind of paint the picture as to what that storage unit was like, what was in there when investigators went in and found the suspect's body. She told me for the most part it was empty, but she said where they found the body wasn't actually in the unit that the suspect had rented out. It was a separate unit. That was something worth note. But again, right now, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney of Massachusetts are linking the shooting at MIT back to the shooting at Brown. I'm live in Boston. John Perrick, NBC 10 News. Guys, back to you.
Okay, thanks for the update. All right, here's what we know about the suspect. Claudio Manuel Neves Valente was 48 years old. Authorities say he's a Portuguese national with a last known address in Miami. He enrolled at Brown in the fall of 2000. In fact, came over here on a student visa and then became a permanent resident. He joined the graduate school to earn a master's in science PhD program in physics. And he took a leave of absence in 2001 and then withdrew in 2003.
During the press conference, the president of Brown, Christina Paxson, was asked about what they knew about his current affiliation with Brown and what his experience was like when he was a student here. This is what she had to say.
During his time at Brown, Neves Valente was enrolled only in physics classes. The majority of physics classes at Brown have always been held within the Barris and Hawley classrooms and labs. Now, detailed records indicating where specific courses were held don't extend back to 2001. But we can say that physics classes typically require access to specialized equipment, including demonstration carts that are a fixed asset in some of Barris and Hawley classrooms. So I think it's safe to assume that this man, when he was a student, spent a great deal of time in that building for classes and other activities.
Now, all of this came to a head hours ago in Salem, New Hampshire, where eventually this man was found dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
NBC 10's Leanna Falk has been on scene watching this investigation now transpire. Leanna, what's it look like at this hour?
Emily, Patrice, things are quiet here outside this storage facility in Salem, New Hampshire. The last thing that we saw was a tow truck arrive, likely to remove that vehicle. This is a key piece of evidence for investigators. It was a Nissan that was found and located through not only tips, but also video surveillance that confirmed that the suspect here, Claudio Valente, came here to Salem, New Hampshire, to this storage facility. Now, investigators have confirmed that his vehicle is here, the one that he rented from that Alamo in Boston, but they also confirmed that he owns a storage unit here, and it's that storage unit where they say that his body was found along with multiple firearms and multiple pieces of evidence that connected him to not only the shooting at Brown University, but the one at in Brookline of that MIT professor as well. So there is a lot to gain from this scene here, although we're not seeing most of it because of where they've stationed us. But we know that what's happening on the inside is a lot of gathering, a lot of information, because there are still several questions that remain from this investigation. As I mentioned before, people want to know why this happened. They want to know why Brown, why now, how did this happen? We know that it was we know the suspect attended the university about 20-something years ago. So what brought him here? The video you're seeing right now is some of the work that's been happening here in Salem, New Hampshire. And investigators have been kind of moving in and out of the facility over the past few hours. We know that there are multiple jurisdictions here on scene, the FBI being one of them, Providence Police being another, and they have really swarmed this facility where we know now that the suspect owned a unit and that his vehicle is here. And what's really amazing about this is that 24 hours ago, we would have never thought that this would end right here. I mean, we think about what was given to us. It was a photo of someone that might have been near the person of interest. That was all of the new developments that came just 24 hours ago. And to think that that photo and that person in a Reddit post ultimately brought investigators here to this facility in Salem, New Hampshire, where we've learned that the suspect, Claudio Valenti, has died. Now, if I bring you guys back live here again, we're kind of waiting for that tow truck to kind of come back out of the parking lot where we can get a better look at this Nissan, the vehicle that might have been used to transport the suspect through these various places where he enacted terrible, terrible violence. Back to you.
Leanna Falk in Salem, New Hampshire for us tonight. We also learned during one of those press conferences that he began renting that storage unit back in November prior to him coming to Providence. And they also revealed a lot about him covering his tracks in this. One of the things they said was his phone couldn't be tracked, and he also had credit cards that weren't in his name. So this had been planned for quite a while.
Yeah, exactly. And we really can't lose sight of the fact that parents out there are still grieving tonight. 2 students are dead, and we've got a number of students that are still in the hospital, Rhode Island Hospital, suffering from gunshot wounds. And one thing that parents want to know is why. We don't know why. Let's go out now to Dan Janik, who's standing by. Oh, Mark Searles. Mark Searles has a weather alert for us. Mark?
Yeah, guys, I'll go real quick here. Just want to give everybody just a real quick heads up. Weather alert tomorrow. Headlines showing the worst of this is going to be in the mid-morning through mid-afternoon, right? So we're talking like 9, 10 a.m. through about 2 to 3 p.m. That's when some of the strongest wind gusts and some of the heaviest rain will come through. Not a huge impact on our coast if you're concerned about that, but there could be some ferry disruptions. Just keep a close watch on that. Not terribly windy right now. It is in the process of getting warmer. We expected this. We're already up to about 50 degrees at our coastline. Those temperatures will continue to rise. We have a little bit of spotty light rain showers that'll come through here in the overnight, but these are some light to moderate showers. That's the heavy stuff just moving through the Ohio Valley. That's what we're targeting again for the mid-morning, and I'm talking like 8, 9 a.m. through just after 2 p.m. If that's the time you're going to find yourselves on the roads, that's when potentially you could have some of the heaviest rain and some of the strongest wind. It's coming out of the south, averaging 20 to 30 miles an hour. Temperatures well into the 50s, but it's the wind that's going to be, the main issue with this as we go through that time frame. So here you go. Again, morning commute shouldn't have massive issues. Bus stop could be a little wet at times, but you get to that 9, 10 a.m.-ish time frame. That's when some of those steadier bands are wrapping through. We're still mild with a south-southwest wind through 3 p.m. And then once this front clears, the wind shifts into a west direction. Most of the rain's over at that time. We are still very windy tomorrow night, but we're turning cool and drier as we head into Saturday. I'll finish this up with one look at those wind gusts again. This is the big concern here. Some of these stronger wind gusts mixing down in that 10 a.m. to about 2 to 3 p.m. time frame. 55 to maybe near 60-mile-an-hour gusts, especially toward the Cape and Islands. The worst of it moves away, but it's still very windy, around 40, maybe 45 miles an hour for us right into Friday night. That eases gradually by around midday or so on Saturday. There shouldn't be much wind at all by Saturday afternoon. So again, travel difficult. That's the weather alert. That wind, that rain combo. Looks dry for the weekend. Dry to start Christmas week. Maybe a few rain and snow showers Tuesday. Jason joins you at 4:30 a.m. at our Sunrise Show with more on the alert. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Mark. Once again, just to recap, a huge development in the Brown University shooting. The suspect taking his own life inside a storage facility in Salem, New Hampshire. I believe we have a photo of the suspect here.
That's Claudio Manuel Neves Valente. He was 48 years old. Authorities say he's a Portuguese national with a last known address in Miami. They aren't sure where he was living right now. Valente enrolled in Brown in the fall of 2000. He joined the graduate school to earn a Master's of Science and then a PhD program in physics. He took a leave of absence in 2001 and then withdrew in 2003.
And this image that we have of him was actually taken at the rental car facility where he rented that car, that the second person yesterday came forward and had spotted him in and kind of cracked open this case. We have some sound from Chief Perez, who you just heard a short time ago, talking about how they cracked this case open.
The community stepped up. It was all about groundwork, public assistance, interviews of individuals, and good old-fashioned policing. That is the type of police work that every police officer in this nation reminds themselves of, and that many do not understand. And that is critically important and often succeeds where technology alone cannot.
All right, now we want to show you some video that we took earlier tonight, and Leanna Falk is up there actually now in Salem, New Hampshire. A few hours ago, we learned that authorities were investigating this storage unit in Salem, New Hampshire. Now, if you drive up that way, it's right off the interstate, So he apparently had rented a unit in there, and it was in his name. Authorities learned that he was in there. They got some surveillance video. They went inside and eventually found out that he had died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Authorities say there was nothing in the unit, just him and that satchel we'd seen him carrying in a number of the surveillance photos and videos that we've showed you over the last few days. And this is some of the video we have. This is from Salem, New Hampshire currently, I believe. Are these live images that we're seeing right now from Salem, New Hampshire, or this from
these
are
have
from
closed off
earlier
that
in the
road
day?
there.
Yeah.
And when we were talking to Leanna, we got a sense earlier, initially it was very intense. There was a sense of urgency. And then everybody started to slow down. And when we talked to Leanna Falk, she said, yep, all the stores are still open here and nobody's been evacuated. So that's when we got an indication that he was dead, because they would have evacuated all of those facilities and all of those houses. We want to go to some sound now from Christina Paxson, the Brown University president.
During his time at Brown, Nueves Valente was enrolled only in physics classes. The majority of physics classes at Brown have always been held within the Barris and Hawley classrooms and labs. Now, detailed records indicating where specific courses were held don't extend back to 2001. But we can say that physics classes typically require access to specialized equipment, including demonstration carts that are a fixed asset in some of Barris and Hawley classrooms. So I think it's safe to assume that this man, when he was a student, spent a great deal of time in that building for classes and other activities.
All right, so before we go, we just want to recap you with where you're at. The suspect, Claudio Neves Valente, a Portuguese national who came to the United States to study in Brown about 25 years ago, killed himself inside a storage unit today. He is the suspect in both the Brown University shooting that killed 2 students and left 9 injured, as well as the suspect in the shooting of an MIT professor in Brookline, Massachusetts on Monday evening. This is another look at the suspect. Right now, officers are working to piece together why he did this. They're going to be combing through the evidence and looking at his connection to both Brown University and the MIT professor who unfortunately lost his life.
And there you see his picture. Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, a former student at Brown University, came to this country on a student visa, eventually became a permanent resident, found dead tonight in a storage unit in Salem, New Hampshire, after authorities traced him there and found a rental car outside. Some very good police work done tonight, and everybody is feeling a sigh of relief tonight, except perhaps for the parents of those 2 students who died in that terrible shooting last Saturday. at Brown University. Our hearts and our prayers go out to them.
Our coverage now picks up on turnto10.com, and we will keep you updated, and we will join you for sunrise with an update.
Good night.